about the fact that like pre-birth matching just shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Because all of a sudden, if you like you match with somebody and they're going to be the parents, and now they're having a baby shower and they're making
have
a
the car
nursery
seat,
and they got the car seat and all their friends are excited and they're doing gender reveals. And how are you supposed to change your mind when you're literally watching this family have all these experiences expecting to get your baby? And
let's talk about the history of adoption in the United States, because for many years in adoption, pre-birth matching was not a thing. In fact, matching in itself was not a thing. In the practice of adoption, matching did not become a thing until adoption in itself became an act of substitution. As you can see here, this was not usually the case before the 20th century that babies were being matched in adoption. Children who were being placed did not lose contact with their natal kin, even in the case of very young children being placed permanently for adoption. When adopted people argue pre-birth matching shouldn't exist, we often hear arguments like, well, what, do you want to just throw them out on the street? You want to put them in foster care or an orphanage? No, again, let's look at history here. In the 19th century, many adoptions involved sharing children rather than giving them away, because adoption was not an act of substituting families for the child. Matching and adoption really became a thing when adoption started to be prescribed as the cure for infertility. By mid-century, infertility had become an unquestioned qualification for adoption. This reinforced the notion that matching compensated for reproductive failure by promising relationships that could pass for the exclusive, authentic, and permanent bonds of kinship that were only natural. In other words, matching, and especially pre-birth matching and adoption, were designed to give infertile adopters the closest thing to the full birthing experience that they could imagine. Matching was a way to erase the adopted person's original family and the adopted person's history prior to adoption. It's important to remember the popularity of matching and adoption coincides with adoption becoming a huge business, with human traffickers like Georgia Tan changing the norms of adoption as we know them. Matching and adoption has always existed to serve the business of adoption, not adopted people. And we know this because prior to matching and adoption, adopted people used to stay with their genetic mothers for the first several months of life to breastfeed and have that important bonding. Again, prior to the advent of matching and adoption, adoption did not represent the permanent legal severance of a child from its family of origin. We can see the vice grip that adoption propaganda has on the average American when people suggest that we should just take children away from their mothers as quickly as possible because those mothers are incapable or they're in crisis, rather than actually being able to say, hey, you know what, let's support these mothers. Let's give them the resources they need to care for their child for as long as they want to care for their child. The adoption industry tends to collectively turn a blind eye to the fact that early bonding between an infant and its mother is extremely important. We know it's important because we don't separate puppies, kittens, or other animals from their mothers when they're born, but for some reason we do this with children in adoption. The sad truth is that this is all by design. The goal in adoption is to separate the child from its mother as early as possible.